Would you mind sharing a bit of that and helping generations of Singaporeans like myself and maybe my future son and daughter to appreciate what it is like to continue to be successful and keep Singapore together?
I think the first difficulty they would have is how to meet, as I put it in my speech, the rising expectations of the younger generation. Because we now are a developed country, and naturally everybody wants to do even better from what we have over here. So can they continue to generate growth of 3% per year to meet their rising expectation? If they can, then this compact with the people will remain solid. But if for some reasons or other they cannot, the electorate is not going to forgive them easily. We can tell them, be realistic, this is where we are. But that's not what it is going to be, because we are all used to this rising income for so many years. So that's one challenges which they will face. And it's also a watershed, because the leaders themselves are brought up in a very different environment. In our generation, we knew what poverty was, what were the problems, and sometimes we are realistic, we can take some pain. But the leaders themselves, would they have that toughness? We don't know. They might have gone through SAF, they might be generals, but that's a different kind of toughness. When you go into politics, when you meet very difficult opponents, who can be very vicious and malicious, you know how to fight them. Using fair methods against them. That's quite tough. And then third, another issue will be, and this is what a banker told me only this week when I met the banker. Several bankers in my office once said his worry was that the Singaporeans are getting soft. That's his word, not my word. I do not necessarily agree with him. So they are getting soft in terms of hunger to do more. If you have so much more, you want to work a little harder to compete against the others, they say, not worth it, just stay where they are. So he is alerting me that there is, from what he sees, a danger that the Singaporeans might be getting soft in terms of their competitive spirit. So these are some of the issues which we face, which were not quite evident in the past. But going forward, I see this as a watershed election, training up people who can mobilize the others to go along with them, to face new challenges. And these are the new challenges that we have. The other example is just total fertility rate. In the past, without encouragement, people just give birth. You see? But in future, can they do so? Can they succeed in getting people to reverse the trend? If they can't, our resident Singaporean population is going to shrink. And that's a very huge challenge. And that's the result of urbanization. And people wanting to have smaller families to enjoy a higher quality of life. So to me, it's very important in that sense. And of course, what I've not said is, next 10 years, I think will not be so active. I also will not be so active. So you're going to have new leaders without the guidance of older leaders like I got the benefit of telling me certain things, I take his advice, I decide what to do. But it's very comforting to have somebody behind you with all the experience of the past, and still having the ability to look way into the future.
If our neighbors were to decide to build ones, is there any way we can influence them to decide otherwise? If not, how are we going to mitigate if things were to happen? Because we are all so close to each other.
I think maybe to have more time, we perhaps reserve all the applause to the end.
Yeah. Okay.
One big applause.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We are being courteous.
No, they are being courteous, but we don't have much time in our dialogue, so I thought save more time for that. No? Well, I think take comfort, that our neighbors are just as worried as we are about their own survival. So you must therefore trust the populations in our neighboring countries. They have the same concerns that we have. In other words, they are not going to allow their own governments to simply set up nuclear power plants unless they are very, very sure that the maximum safety precautions will be taken. And likewise for Singapore, this is a long-term plan. There's no plan to build up a nuclear power plant within the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. But we've got to begin to understand the technology, the dangers, the safety features required. So one day we decide to build a nuclear plant. And that knowledge is useful for us because when our neighbors decide to build, with our own knowledge, we can also contribute to the discussion when they build their own plants. And of course, we do this maybe through ASEAN and maybe through the International Economic Agency to ensure that the safety features are taken into account. But your concern will be you cannot actually prevent this. Something may still go wrong, other perhaps human error, perhaps a gigantic earthquake, and things go wrong. Now, what do we do? Well, I'll just say, well, then everybody now pauses over this nuclear energy thing. And there is a pause because there is a real concern that things can go wrong. And where do you go to? As you said, U.S. got it, Russia has got it, and then now Japan. You see, 3 countries with experience in nuclear power. Then let's look for alternative sources, which I believe every country now will be looking at. What are they? Well, wind power, solar power, whatever it is, I think people are exploring it. Can there be a new technology which one day, may allow you to have a new source of energy without causing you this worry that if something goes wrong, I think it's all gone for us. So there's no clear answer, but I know that the nuclear energy will remain something very important for the world. Otherwise, they're going to just burn more and more fossil fuel, and you're going to have climate change, which itself causes other problems down the road.